In the quiet hours of a late autumn afternoon, the final period at Eternal Sunshine Primary School was draped in an eerie calm. Children were busy with their year-end projects, and teachers bustled about, wrapping up lessons before the fall break. Miss Tina, a young new teacher, reminded her students to take their projects and belongings home. Exhausted after a day of chasing preschoolers, she took a deep breath, savoring the calm before the final bell rang, signaling the start of fall vacation. Little did she know this tranquil scene was about to be shattered by an unexpected visitor. As the children shuffled out of the classrooms in a single queue, Tina was suddenly jolted by a loud cacophony of screams coming from the main hall. She saw children and teachers alike running in panic. Rushing to investigate, she was stunned to see a wild wolf had burst through the front doors, causing immediate chaos. The serene, familiar environment of the school had been suddenly transformed into a scene of havoc. Miss Tina, rooted to the spot in shock and fear, noticed something strange dangling from the wolf's mouth. A sight so chilling it made her freeze in place. Tina's colleagues scattered in all directions, but she remained rooted to the spot, her heart racing and hands trembling. Amid the chaos, she spotted something peculiar in the wolf's mouth. A small, strange object she couldn't quite make out. Curiosity tugged at her, but there was no time to dwell on the mystery. She had to ensure her students' safety first. Summoning all her courage, Tina sprang into action. She quickly ushered the bewildered children back into their classrooms, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. "Everyone inside! Quickly!" she called, guiding the students into the nearest room. She closed the door behind them and locked it, then grabbed a chair to wedge it firmly under the doorknob. Moving swiftly from room to room, Tina repeated the process, securing each door with whatever she could find: chairs, desks, even heavy cupboards. The children's faces were pale with fear, but her calm demeanor reassured them. "Stay quiet and stay together," she instructed, her voice gentle but firm. With the students safely locked away, Tina turned her attention back to the hallway. The wolf was still there, pacing restlessly, the strange object still dangling from its mouth. She knew she had to get the animal out before it hurt someone. The surge of adrenaline from the earlier moment was nothing compared to what Tina felt next. Her heart hammered in her chest, with an intensity that drowned out everything else. The sight of the wolf was etched into her mind, a vivid image she couldn't ignore. She was compelled to act, driven by a mix of concern and curiosity. With a resolve that surprised even herself, Tina made her decision. She was going to lure the wolf into the nearby storage room, hoping to contain the situation and buy some time to think. Taking a deep breath, Tina grabbed a broom from a nearby closet. She used it to create noise, banging it against the walls and floor to draw the wolf's attention. The animal turned towards her, its eyes locking onto hers. With slow, deliberate movements, Tina began to back away, leading the wolf down the hallway and away from the classrooms. As she reached the end of the hall, Tina found the school's storage room. She carefully opened the door and backed into the room, the wolf following her. The sound of the door closing behind them was sharp, a definitive click that seemed to seal their fates together in that confined space. The air turned dense, charged with an anticipation that weighed heavily on her shoulders. What now? For a brief moment there was silence, a deceptive calm before the storm. Then the atmosphere shifted palpably. The wolf's eyes, once filled with a kind of wary understanding, now glinted with a fierce, untamed light. Its body stiffened, muscles coiling like springs ready to unleash. Tina pressed her back against the door she had just shut. She could feel the static in the air. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched the scene unfold. The wolf's growl, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the floor, filled the tiny space. In a flash of insight, Tina shrank her stature, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. Her mind raced with thoughts of how to communicate her intentions of peace to the wolf. "I'm not your enemy," she silently conveyed through her softened gaze and slow movements, hoping the animal would sense her desire to be non-confrontational. Tina quickly understood that the wolf's aggressive actions weren't meant to be harmful. It was evident the wolf, along with the small creature it protected, needed assistance, whether from her or a professional veterinarian. Tina's heart pounded with the responsibility of the moment, her resolve firming with the realization that she was now their only bridge to safety and care. She curled into herself, minimizing her presence to seem less intimidating. Amazingly, the wolf seemed to understand Tina's gesture. It relaxed a bit, and its growls turned into cautious whimpers. With the danger not feeling as immediate, Tina took a deep breath. She could smell the musty scent of old cardboard in the air, mixed with her growing determination to get help and save her students. Tina remained motionless, her body language carefully conveying calm and submission. She could feel the wolf's eyes on her, watching every move. Slowly, she inched her hand toward the door handle behind her, maintaining eye contact with the animal. The wolf whimpered again, and Tina could sense its growing unease. With a silent prayer, she gently turned the handle and cracked the door open just enough to slip out. The wolf's eyes followed her every move, but it remained where it was, its protective stance still intact. Tina moved with painstaking slowness, keeping her movements fluid and deliberate to avoid startling the animal. Once outside the room, she hurriedly closed the door behind her. She then ran down the hallway, her heart pounding as she searched for help. The school, eerily silent after the initial chaos, felt like a maze as she navigated through the corridors. Finally, Tina reached the staff room, where a few teachers had sought shelter, trying to make sense of the situation. "We need to call animal control," she said, her voice urgent but controlled. "There's a wolf in the storage room, and it has something in its mouth. I think it needs help." However, her plea was met with reluctance. Her fellow teachers looked at each other with unease, their hesitation visible in their awkward movements and the tense silence that followed her request. "The police have been notified," one of them finally responded, his voice steady but eyes avoiding Tina's intense gaze. "There's nothing more we can do." Tina's heart sank. The plea in her voice grew more desperate as she attempted to sway them. "But we can't just wait. What if it's too late?" Yet despite her appeals, the resolve in the teacher's eyes remained unchanged. They had made their decision, leaving Tina standing in the empty hallway, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Feeling a mix of frustration and determination, Tina decided that she can't give up just yet. She pushed through the school corridors, her footsteps echoing with purpose. Each refusal added fuel to her resolve, driving her to find someone, anyone, willing to take a leap of faith with her. Finally, her persistence paid off when she found Steve, the school custodian. Steve, upon hearing Tina's plea, saw the determination in her eyes and agreed to help without a moment's hesitation. "Let's see what we can do," he said, his voice a mix of resolve and curiosity. Together, they made their way back to the room where the wolf and its companion waited. As the two of them neared the room, the haunting sound of howling filled the air, a clear signal of distress. The emotional howl underscored the wolf's deep concern for the small, mysterious creature it had brought into the hospital. It was a sound that resonated with a raw, protective urgency, revealing a profound bond between the two beings. With every step closer to the wolf, Tina's heart raced, her mind attuned to the delicate situation unfolding before them. As she reached out, hoping to bridge the gap of trust between them, the wolf responded. Its teeth bared in a stark warning, a primal reminder of the boundaries not to be crossed. Tina hesitated for a moment, aware of the daunting task ahead. She had no idea what the small creature was, only that it appeared extremely frail and required immediate assistance. Steve proposed consulting a veterinarian, although the nearest one was quite a distance away. Despite this, she swiftly grabbed her phone and dialed a vet, urgently conveying the situation. There was a long pause after she finished talking, making Tina's heart race. She could almost hear the clock ticking, each second stretching out, making her more worried. Finally, the vet asked her to describe the creature. Tina did her best, mentioning every detail she noticed. After she finished, there was another silence on the line. It felt like forever as Tina stood there with her phone in hand, waiting for the vet to say something. She could hear her own breathing, fast and shallow, and the eerie silence of the hallways. She was hoping for some words of wisdom or a plan, anything to help the weak creature in front of her. However, in that quiet moment, Tina realized something troubling. The vet didn't know any more about the mysterious creature than she did. Even so, he understood the situation was serious, especially as she explained how the creature's condition was getting worse. Suddenly, Tina was startled by the wolf's loud, sad howl. Its powerful cry filled the room, making the urgency of the moment even clearer. Tina felt a chill run down her spine. Something was seriously wrong. The howl was more than just noise. It was a deep cry of fear and sadness that echoed around them, leaving everything quiet afterward. Standing there, amidst the musty smell of the storage room and the distant sounds of activity, Tina realized there was more going on than she initially thought. Right at that tense moment, the room's door flew open as police officers rushed in, their footsteps loud against the hard floor. They scanned the room quickly, their eyes alert and focused, ensuring no one was in immediate danger. "Everyone, please stay calm," one officer announced, his voice authoritative yet reassuring, cutting through the tension in the air. Tina, her heart pounding in her chest, stepped forward. "Please, keep your distance," she pleaded, her voice firm but laced with urgency. She gestured towards the wolf and its companion, indicating the delicacy of the situation. Just as Tina was negotiating with the police officers, something completely unexpected happened. Instead of attacking as she had feared, the wolf did something completely abnormal. It lowered its head and flattened its ears. It then gently nudged Tina's pants with its snout, tugging at it softly as if trying to communicate something. Tina's heart skipped a beat. She had expected aggression, but this gesture was one of trust and desperation. Relief washed over Tina as she realized the wolf wasn't a threat. The animal was seeking help. However, the police officers, misunderstanding the gesture, panicked and started yelling at Tina to get back. Their shouts startled the wolf, causing it to bolt towards the main door. But as it ran, the wolf suddenly stopped and turned back, its deep, penetrating gaze locking onto Tina. It seemed to be waiting for her, its eyes pleading and urgent, compelling her to follow. The air was thick with tension and anticipation, leaving Tina with an inexplicable sense of purpose. Tina's eyes widened in surprise. The wolf's behavior was so out of character from the aggressive posture it had initially shown. It seemed as though it was inviting her, urging her to follow. There was an intelligence in its gaze, a silent communication that was both astonishing and mysterious. Ignoring the police officers' frantic protests, Tina took a tentative step towards the wolf. "Stay back," one officer shouted, his voice edged with panic. But Tina's intuition told her that the wolf meant no harm. She held up a hand to the officers, signaling them to stay put. "Trust me," she said, her voice calm yet resolute. With her heart pounding, Tina followed the wolf as it led her out of the main door and into the open. The cold air bit at her skin, but she barely noticed. The wolf moved with purpose, occasionally glancing back to ensure she was still following. Behind her, she heard the sounds of the police officers backing away in fear, their shouts fading into the distance. As the wolf crossed the dew-covered grounds and headed towards the woods, Tina quickened her pace, determined to keep up. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Tina knew she couldn't turn back. The sense of urgency grew stronger around them, making every leaf rustle and distant owl hoot feel more intense. With trembling fingers, Tina pulled out her phone and dialed James's number, a friendly animal expert hoping to seek help. When James answered, his voice was a reassuring presence in the middle of all the uncertainty. "Tina, what's going on?" he asked, genuine concern in his tone. Tina, breathing fast, quickly told James about the extraordinary events of the night. "James, a wild wolf has brought me into the woods. It has something with it, and I can't leave it behind." There was a short silence from James, and Tina could almost sense his worry growing. "Tina, it's great you want to help, but please be careful," he said. "Wild animals can act in ways we don't expect, and this could be dangerous." The forest around her seemed to amplify the weight of James's words, the rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of the owl becoming a symphony of nature's warnings. Yet Tina felt pulled between wanting to help and listening to James's sensible advice. "Stay put," James urged. "I'll come to you as quickly as I can, and we'll figure this out together." Tina paused, torn about what to do next. She decided to send James her live location, hoping he could help once he got there. But as time slowly passed, the urgency she felt became too much to ignore. She was driven by a force she couldn't explain, compelling her to keep following the enigmatic wolf deeper into the unknown. As the wolf delved deeper into the thick woods, Tina's anxiety grew more intense. A creeping feeling of being observed sent shivers down her spine, and every rustle of leaves in the shadows felt foreboding. She could hear strange sounds in the distance. What was that? She had never heard that before. Just when she was on the verge of turning back, a sudden loud noise shattered the eerie silence. Tina's phone buzzed with a call, but the signal was weak, turning James's voice into a garbled mess. She could barely make out his words, but it sounded like he was telling her to come back. Now she faced a crucial decision: follow the wolf further or listen to James and turn back. After a moment of hesitation, Tina's courage kicked in. She chose to chase after the mysterious sounds, feeling she was getting closer to uncovering something important. The deeper she went, the denser the forest became, and a strong feeling told her she wasn't alone. It felt like eyes were watching her every move. Her heart pounded with fear until, out of nowhere, a voice in the distance called out her name. The rush of adrenaline coursing through Tina's body made everything feel surreal, clouding her ability to recognize the voice calling her name. But as she looked in the direction of the sound, clarity struck. It was James, somehow managing to find her just when she needed him most. However, the wolf, not knowing James, acted on its instincts and started to rush towards him. Realizing the danger in a flash, Tina quickly stepped in front of James, ready to protect him from the wolf's attack. Miraculously, the wolf stopped its charge right before reaching them, avoiding a confrontation at the very last moment. Tina's sudden intervention, coupled with the visible relief on her face, seemed to communicate to the wolf that James was not a threat, but a potential ally. With a subtle change in its stance, the wolf turned away, suggesting that both Tina and James should follow its lead. The sudden charge of the wolf left James in a state of shock, causing him to stumble and fall to the ground. Gasping for breath, he turned to Tina, his eyes wide with confusion and concern, and asked urgently, "What's going on? What are we chasing here?" Tina, her own heart still racing from the encounter, shook her head, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I have no idea, James. The gravity of the situation is a mystery to me as well." With James right behind her, they kept going through the thick woods. As they ventured deeper, the distressed noises she had been hearing earlier grew louder with every step, creating an ominous soundtrack to their journey. The sounds seemed to reverberate through the trees, and the tension in the air became palpable. Finally, they reached the origin of the noises, a dark, old well. Standing at the edge of the old, weathered well, their eyes widened in realization. Something had fallen down the well, and the distressing noises were coming from within its depths. The wolf, with an almost knowing look, hinted that this was where it wanted Tina and James to lend their assistance. The well opening loomed like a bottomless black hole, ready to swallow them up. As Tina peered down, the cool, damp air from within seemed to cling to her skin. Even though they couldn't see anything, they were sure something was there, as they could hear its strange, echoing cries of distress. In a stroke of luck, James had brought a strong rope with him. Examining it carefully, he turned to Tina with a plan. "This rope can handle my weight. I'll descend to find out what's there." Tina hesitated, her mind racing with fears of things going wrong. Doubts gnawed at her, and she wondered if she was even strong enough to hold him. She noticed James's hands shaking slightly as he prepared for the descent. He then took a deep breath and began to lower himself over the well's edge. Tina clutched the rope tightly, realizing that their journey into the well's mysterious depths was going to require all her strength. James's voice remained steady and calm as he instructed her on handling the rope. She focused on controlling her own nerves and gripped the rope tightly, determined not to let him down. As she focused on her task, a quiet thought crossed her mind. "I must trust in myself as much as he trusts in me." James rapidly disappeared into the darkness below. Tina watched, her heart pounding faster with every inch he dropped. The well was deep and shadowy, and all she could hear was the echo of James's careful movements. Her hands were sweaty, clutching the rope that connected her to James down in the blackness. Then, without warning, The rope jerked and slipped right out of her hands. Panic flooded her. She had tried to tie the knot around her waist, but now realized it wasn't tight enough. Fear choked her as she frantically tried to grab the rope again. But it was too late. In a quick move, Tina stepped on the end of the rope, hoping to stop it from slipping further. For a moment, she thought she might have stopped it in time. But then she felt the rope go slack quickly and heard the sound of James falling down with a thud. A scream shattered the quiet, a sharp, terrifying sound that bounced off the well's walls. It was James. His scream cut through the air, filled with pain and fear. Tina's heart stopped. She could almost feel the cold, damp air rushing up from the well, carrying James's scream to her. "James!" she shouted, her voice trembling. "James, are you okay?" But only silence answered her, thick and heavy. The well seemed to swallow her words, leaving her with a dreadful silence and the echo of James's scream in her ears. She felt helpless, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. In a panic, James's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, desperately trying to turn on the flashlight. The darkness around him was thick, pressing in from all sides. With a click, a beam of light sliced through the dark, revealing the deep hidden spaces of the well below him. His eyes went wide with fear as the light touched the corners of the abyss, and suddenly the strange noises he'd been hearing became clearer. He could hear the tiny skitterings and whispers of movement echoing off the stone walls. With a pounding heart, he pointed the flashlight towards the unsettling sounds, his breath catching in his throat. The light revealed dozens of tiny, glowing eyes staring back at him. The creatures, unknown and eerie, seemed to squirm and move in the shadows. James could barely breathe as he realized he wasn't alone down here. The sight of these creatures, with their eyes shining in the light, sent shivers down his spine. But then a realization dawned on him. "Tina, you've got to see this!" James's voice echoed up from the well, mixed with shock and a hint of fear. Tina moved closer, her heart racing with relief and a bit of fear. Looking into the dark space lit by James's flashlight, she noticed something. There was movement. Little shapes running around, looked just like the strange creatures the wolf had brought to the school. The cold realization washed over her, sending a shiver down her spine. They were not alone. The wolf that had burst into the school, causing chaos and confusion, was part of a larger mystery, one that lay hidden beneath the earth in this forgotten well. As James's light danced over the shapes moving below, he called up to her. "Are these the same creatures, Tina?" "Yes," Tina confirmed. "The wolf. Maybe it was leading us here on purpose." James's voice trembled, his words echoing off the damp walls of the well. "It seems like it wanted us to find the critters trapped down here." Tina, peering into the darkness illuminated by the shaky beam of James's flashlight, felt a chill run down her spine. The small creatures moved in the shadows, their eyes reflecting the light and creating an eerie glow. The sounds of their movement, a soft rustling, filled the silence, making the scene even more unnerving. James continued, his voice laced with concern. "Remember the one you told about at the school? It was injured. Seeing these ones here, they might be in trouble too. Maybe they fell in and can't get out. We can't just leave them here." Tina nodded, her decision firming up in her heart. The memory of the injured creature at the school flashed through her mind, its pained eyes pleading for help. "You're right, we have to save them. If the wolf brought us here, it must be to ask for help." Tina's heart pounded as she shouted down to James. "I'm going to get both you and these creatures out of there. Just hang on." She knew she had to come up with a plan and fast. Looking around desperately, she spotted a large tree nearby. An idea sparked. She could use it to anchor the rope. She rushed over and looped the rope around the tree, pulling it taut and tying a triple knot. Satisfied it would hold, she called down, "James, I've secured the rope. Start handing up the creatures one by one. I'll make sure they're safe." James's reply echoed from the well, "Got it. Here comes the first one." Tina watched with bated breath as a small, furry creature emerged from the darkness, clutched gently in James's hands. He had created a makeshift sling out of his jacket to carry them up. As James drew closer, Tina reached down and lifted the frightened animal to safety. "You're okay now, little guy," she whispered. Tina gathered a bunch of leaves to make a warm, soft corner for the creatures to rest. One by one, more emerged from the well as James made trip after trip down the rope. Each time James ascended, his muscles straining, Tina's nerves jangled, but thankfully the rope held fast. With each creature rescued, Tina felt a swell of relief. After a tense and breathless half-hour, James, with great effort, hoisted the last of the tiny creatures out of the dark pit. Laid out on the ground, the 5 animals blinked in the dim light, their eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and curiosity. The air was thick with tension as James and Tina pondered their next move. With renewed hope, Tina and James quickly gathered the tiny creatures into their makeshift carriers. The wolf stood nearby, its eyes attentive and posture ready. Gently, Tina lifted the last fuzzy animal and placed it into the wolf's waiting mouth. The wolf clamped down softly, its jaw tender yet secure around the precious cargo. Hurriedly, the unlikely trio made their way out of the dark forest, moving swiftly towards the local veterinarian clinic. Tina's mind spun with questions. Would the creatures be all right? What were they exactly? But she tucked her curiosity away, focusing on getting them medical attention as fast as possible. Bursting into the clinic, Tina called out urgently for help. To her relief, a seasoned veterinarian stood ready, his experienced eyes quickly assessing the situation. With firm yet gentle guidance, he directed Tina and James to place the creatures on examining tables. However, as Tina moved to follow, the vet halted her with an outstretched hand. "I know you want to stay with them, but I need room to work. Please wait outside. I promise to update you as soon as I can." Tina opened her mouth to protest, but caught herself. She realized the vet knew best. With a reluctant nod, she retreated to the waiting room, James by her side, who shared a state of nervous anticipation. Time crawled by endlessly as the two of them sat hunched in the sterile waiting room, watching the hands of the clock make their endless loops. Tina wrung her hands, her mind swirling with possibilities, each one more concerning than the last. What if the creatures were too injured? What if the vet couldn't help them? She had never felt more powerless. All they could do was wait and hope. After a while, the vet swung open the door and welcomed them inside with a smile. He informed them that they had arrived just in time, and their efforts had succeeded in saving the animals. Tina, feeling a mix of relief and curiosity, turned to the vet and asked for an explanation. It turned out that these animals were a rare crossbreed between a coyote and a wolf. The vet couldn't determine how they ended up inside the well, but he emphasized their uniqueness. Tina was adamant about not letting them return to the wild. They needed a safe place to call home. Luckily, James's connection to the local animal sanctuary provided a glimmer of hope. With ample space and resources, the sanctuary was more than equipped to care for these extraordinary beings. It was a perfect solution, offering them a chance at a new life filled with love and security. In the days that followed, Tina found herself drawn to these pups, their bond growing stronger with each passing visit. As she spent time with them, she felt a sense of warmth and affection envelop her, filling her heart with joy. It was a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty she had felt on that fateful night in the forest. Reflecting on her journey, Tina knew she had made the right choice in following the wolf into the unknown. It had led her to a place of unexpected happiness, a world where love and gratitude flowed freely from her newfound furry friends. And as she looked into their eyes, she knew she had found not just companionship, but a profound connection that would last a lifetime.